In this episode of Cyprus Diaspora Uncovered, leading healthcare professionals, researchers, policymakers and innovators explore the future of healthcare in Cyprus and the transformative role of research, technology and collaboration in improving patient outcomes. The discussion examines the challenges and opportunities surrounding cancer and chronic disease prevention, early detection, access to innovative treatments, survivorship and palliative care. Panellists also highlight the growing impact of biotechnology, clinical research and medical innovation, while exploring how stronger collaboration between healthcare providers, researchers, investors, policymakers, and the global Cypriot diaspora can help build a sustainable, patient-centered healthcare ecosystem for the future. This panel discussion was recorded live at the Cyprus Diaspora Forum on May 8th, 2026 at the AMARA Hotel in Limassol, Cyprus.
Kalimera everyone. Welcome to this morning's panel session. It's a real honor and a privilege for me to be moderating today's session. This is the healthcare track for the Diaspora Forum. It's for me, again, a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'll introduce myself subsequently. I'll go last. I've got a very esteemed panel in front of me here. We'll go one by one in terms of introductions. I'll frame the session for us this morning. I've got a number of questions that I'll pose, but I would also encourage the audience to ask questions, share perspectives, and give commentary in that regard. But maybe let's start with introductions. Elia?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evangelia Thanasiou. I'm going to do a short intro, right? I mean, just what I have done in a short bio. I'm an engineer as a background, electrical and biomedical engineer. And the past 4 years, I have been involved with early stage health tech startups. I have been part of founding teams. Both startups were coming out from research groups. And last year, I have transitioned into the innovation ecosystem. Right now, I'm supporting startups. I'm a startup coach in an incubator in Athens. And I'm also doing business development in a digital health company that we're having here in Cyprus. Yeah, and I'm very excited about startups, innovation, ecosystem in Cyprus.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you very much. My name's Stephen Petratos. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, at Monash University specifically. I lead a very large laboratory looking at particularly disease outcomes in progressive multiple sclerosis. But more recently, my laboratory and team have gone into drug development, where we've identified a novel small molecule and have translated the fundamental science into a clinical trial. And we're hoping to actually bring it here into Europe very soon. So very excited to be here and actually interact with some fantastic people on the panel and obviously provide some insights into my journey as well through the translational scientific space. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Konstantinos Irakleous. I'm a medical engineer with background in mechanics and electronics as well as robotics. And I spent my tenure in 10 years in London, working closely with clinicians and surgeons at hospitals in London, at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital and Great Ormond Street Hospital, top hospitals at what they do. When I was at UCL. Right now, I came back to Cyprus to start up my business, which is the continuation of my PhD work, looking at the gait analysis and how the human body moves and interacts with the space. And for this end, we concentrate mainly on rehabilitation, patient monitoring for orthopedic patients and diabetic as well. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, all. I see that everybody is excited. Listen.
They should be.
My name is Dimitris Kourdis. I'm the chief scientist. I'm an engineer by trade. But when people see me and my family, meaning my wife, they call us the 1.5 doctor. So my wife is a doctor, hematologist, oncologist. I'm half a doctor, but I get trained up very, very fast. So do a lot of work in basically helping Cyprus develop its strategy across all fields, including the medical field. So happy to be here with you.
Hi, my name is Konstantinos Zamboglu. I'm the medical director of the German Medical Institute. I'm also nowadays half a doctor because the rest of the time we are trying to settle up our research and innovation department, including a clinical trial unit bringing innovative treatments to the Cypriot patients.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'll just give a very short introduction. I'm Dr. Panellists. I'm a clinician scientist, spent 10 years in the NHS in London, trained in bone marrow and stem cell transplantation, so taking patients through a very complex procedure. Then ultimately moved into biotech and big pharma, developing highly complex therapies from concept to commercialization. I'm also a biotech entrepreneur. So I've co-founded, built, scaled companies, but always focusing on bringing therapeutic and transformational therapies to patients. I'm also a patient advocate. I'm a chair of a patient advocacy group in a rare disease, and certainly looking forward to the next session. So we want to be respectful of time in that regard as well. I just wanted to kind of just frame a little bit of the conversation, if I may. And again, really, appreciate the panel taking time out of busy schedules. So I want this to be interactive, as I'd mentioned before. This is not a traditional panel discussion. I think, we want to have a very structured, I would say, system level dialogue in some regards. There's a very, very interesting and eclectic set of competencies, skills, and experiences here on the panel, and I want to be able to really, maximize that. And I think the session, what we want to try and do today is maybe identify the most critical structural challenges impacting patient outcomes in Cyprus. Maybe explore how research, innovation, and policy can be better aligned. Position Cyprus, of course, as an emerging hub for healthcare innovation and clinical research, and we can certainly focus on that, and we certainly have expertise to be able to represent that. And then, more importantly, how to mobilize the Cyprus diaspora as a strategic contributor to execution. So ultimately, I think the goal is to move towards how do we prioritize and how do we create a framework around potential collaborative pathways, I would say. But the North Star here is the patient. That's our North Star. And we have to have the patient at the epicenter in that regards. And I think that's what we're all passionate about. And I think that's why, we have representatives here in the audience that, again, reflect the focus on the patient. So, Konstantinos, maybe I can come to you first. So we kind of think about, that framework. You obviously represent a center of excellence here in Cyprus. When we think about sort of the patient pathway and the patient paradigm, where do you think that patients systematically get lost in the pathway? Where are the bottlenecks, so to speak, as we think about, as we were discussing earlier, clinical trial access, for example?
So regarding clinical trials, as a small opener, I want to ask the audience regarding the patient pathway, because I worked 20 years in Germany in the medical field and I came to Cyprus. You are Cypriot patients. If I would say, come on to our center, we have a nice study in oncology, you will be randomized between the standard of care and a new drug, which might work, but which also could not work. Nobody knows. This is why we do this trial. How many of you guys would participate in this trial? Please raise your hands. So randomized trial, we randomize between standard of care and a novel drug. Please raise your hand who would participate in some cancer. Yeah, you are a cancer patient now. You are a cancer patient, you are coming in our center, and I say, we have a randomized trial. Do you want to participate? How many of you would participate? Yeah. But this was just an opening question. What I wanted to say is with this opening question, I saw approximately 50% wanted to participate in this trial. And what I wanted to say, I have the feeling that in Northern Europe, people are more likely, patients are more likely to participate in a trial than in Cyprus. So this is my starting point, and based on this starting point, we have to do our discussion how we can include more patients into clinical trials in Cyprus. This is the point, my point. And regarding your questions, and you had some part of the answer. First of all, there is something like a suspicious thinking in the Cypriot patients that this trial, I'm like a laboratory rat, why I should give my own body for something like this. So we have to produce awareness for clinical trials. We have to produce awareness that you are not a laboratory rat. We are bringing new drugs to you or new treatments to you. This could be of benefit for you. So rising awareness would be my most important part.
Please, Steve.
Maybe I can also add to that a little bit. One of the novel things, especially in the prostate cancer field just recently, that's being developed in the UK, where there have been more pragmatic adaptive trials incorporated, and making the patients aware of that you are likely to actually get on the trial in time, dependent on the outcome measures. So I think that's also valid in this discussion too, to make patients aware of every aspect and different types of trial design that we can actually incorporate for patients.
Something on this, something we are doing in London, but we had funding to do that, to give an incentive to patients.
Constantino, maybe,
just to give incentive to people join our clinical studies. We offer some benefits just to persuade them to attend, maybe some money or some other health benefits, some networking events as well, which brings the patient much closer to the technology and to the ecosystem, which with these events, you could educate and inform the patient about the clinical study.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm the Chief Therapeutics and Clinical Strategy Officer for Worldwide Clinical Trials. We're a mid-sized clinical research organization with a global footprint. And as the healthcare ambassador for the Cyprus Diaspora Forum, I'm always advocating for companies to come to Cyprus and explore Cyprus in terms of clinical trial participation. We have patients here that are waiting. And a clinical trial is a very viable option for patients, as you've mentioned. But I also agree with Androula that it's about education and developing the right tools to engage the patient. In terms of, as I just kind of think about, again, the framework, how we develop policy, how we implement policy, what structural decisions, just thinking about it historically, for example, we want to give our patients options. So do we feel that structural decisions have been avoided in order to get us to this point? Or what do we need to do in order to enhance that proposition from a structural or policy perspective? I just wanted to get your thoughts.
First of all, thank you very much for the question. Sometimes, and I'll say this, I'll wear two hats. The one hat is from a strategist coming into the government. Sometimes we have a situation where we see that we do have policies leading into specific decisions, but we may not have had, this evidence-based policy-making, let's say, mentality that actually helps us optimize the system moving forward. Now, what we're doing, and this is actually something that's coming new with the new AI strategy, and it's also a new direction of the government. And I think on I think it was the 24th of February, where the Deputy Minister of the Presidency basically welcomed a new initiative from Europe, which we basically said informed policy making, right? Evidence policy making. And that is really going to be a game changer for us moving forward, because once you start seeing where you have gaps, see where you basically have your policies maybe not creating that maximum impact, or seeing basically where you do have areas where you can improve from a policy perspective, that gives us that whole 360 perspective that we need to actually address. So what we're really working on right now is building all of these tools, all of these platforms that are really going to help us identify the entire system. And this might not be a direct response to your question, but what we see is we have certain challenges in the medical system, in the healthcare system, that are there because of, traditional areas we've been looking at it and trying to solve it. Of course, the Ministry of Health, which is the responsible ministry for policy and all of the interventions, is actually aligning with all of, the EU legislations and the EU policies. However, what I just said is really enabling the country to be able to really see what do we really need to do for evidence-based policy making? What do we need to do for example, clinical trials? How are we going to optimize our system? How are we going to get to our patients? And do we really have a 360 perspective of a patient today? So today, we don't, right? We have a system, but our systems are siloed. And all of these, I think, areas are going to really help us get to the point where we're really going to plan for the future. And I think that's something that's not a traditional challenge only for Cyprus. And working on the EU, let's say, boards in terms of virtual human twins, it's something that we're trying to solve. And particularly, as we shared in another forum where Ms. Androula was, getting to a point where we actually enable Cyprus to be participant in the virtual human twin actually gets us to really understand an end-to-end perspective. How do I address, the gaps? Is it, for example, one disease versus the other? What clinical trials are required? Are we going to be able to really look at, predictive diagnostics? Are we going to be able to get to a point where we will be able to get the personal doctor, right, or the doctor being able to have, that personalization? And last but not least, right, bridge this gap between our, let's say, pharmaceutical sector, the medical professionals, and I think all of the spectrum. And I'm very happy that Konstantinos is here with us, because we started doing some work in India with Tata Memorial Hospital to build a bridge, and that is part of a bridge that helps us pave the way to really create and operate on the European data spaces, the health data spaces. And moving forward, we just had an announcement by the National Health Authority about the EHR platform, and that all comes together. So I think to get to the policy level where we actually have the policy interventions that are correct, we need the building blocks, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah. Thank you. Constantino, you wanted to make a point?
Just one short thing to add. Talking about clinical trials, there are two types of clinical trials. There are the investigator-initiated clinical trials. So these are the trials a physician thinks, I have to do this trial to help my patients. And of course, there are the pharma or industry-initiated trials, which are also very valuable and good, coming from Roche, Novartis, whatever companies they want to test their drugs. In Cyprus, we have a huge gap regarding the investigator-initiated trials, because as an investigator in Cyprus, you just don't have any funding at all to do your trial. RIF is doing a great job for research and innovation, but this is a concrete gap. There's no funding program for me as a physician, or for any physician on this island, to perform an investigator-initiated trial. This is something we have to address, because trials need time. The doctors don't have time. There are no clinician scientist programs and so on. So we need help here.
And I agree. And I think, again, it goes back to the point around a clinical trial could be an option, but obviously, we also think about, to your point, products that then become commercialized, and how we think about access for patients. So it's building an armamentarium where patients have options. And I think that drives our engagement with patients. So Steve, I was actually going to come to you, because I want to talk a little bit about, and that's a good segue, research and translation. So, in your opinion, what separates research from therapy producing systems? We kind of think about that bridge, but, I wanted to kind of get your perspective, but also I think to get Androula's point, how do we make that, how do we enhance that value proposition?
Yeah, this is I could talk about this for about an hour at least.
Dimitri's only got it till 10 o'clock.
We do have another session to get to. In Australia, there's been a massive push, just like there's the setup in the US and in the UK, where the academic health sciences have been set up and established. And it was a governmental approach with funding set up. The major hospitals that were affiliated with the medical schools at the universities were set up for that translational bridge to be met from the perspective of not only forward translation, where you're actually developing therapeutics that end up it's bench to bedside, but also reverse translation, where we actually get back into the bench to identify any outcomes that are being seen by patients, even following post-market surveillance of drugs, that we need to assess where we can actually adapt those drugs and can be incorporated into other areas of diseases, repurposing, for instance, is a prime example. So, these sort of aspects are not cheap for a country to set up, number one. Number two, there needs to be a really strong governance and also funding being poured into these infrastructure to allow for people to be attracted, and top clinicians and clinician scientists coming to those centres that want to work under leading people that are heavily involved in research and innovation, but obviously also policy making within the clinical sector. So from my experience working in a translational centre at the Alfred Hospital affiliated with Monash University, which has a number of hospital sites as well, it's just the central clinical school. We've defined it as a School of Translational Medicine, so I work under Translational Medicine School, and our department is a Translational Neuroscience department. That is seamless. So we are constantly scientists, basic scientists, and also applied scientists that are interacting on a daily basis with physicians that are treating their patients, and are also running very large clinical trials, either phase 3 or very early stage as well.
Thank you for that. And I want to also come to Evangelia just in one moment. But Steve, going back to your point, if you moved your program here, what would fail first?
I'm not one that looks for failure. No, because but that's a good way to think about it. It's actually the people. So the people make the programs.
Yeah.
So you need to make certain that you have every single brick in that wall to ensure a seamless sort of outcome that you wouldn't anticipate that you could achieve, say, in Australia or the UK or Germany. In my view, we need to attract the highest caliber people into this country to ensure that sort of is delivered appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think as a biotech entrepreneur, I'm always looking for ways of de-risking my process. Yes. How do I de-risk? How do I identify the rate limiting step in the process? So, Evangelia, maybe coming to you, where do you think, in terms of startups, we kind of think about that, that ability to kind of, great scientific idea. How do we sort of think about implementation? But where do startups fail to scale? Because in my opinion, that's a rate limiting step. And it's so critical to kind of think about what's the end game here? And the end game is the ability to scale, in my experience. So just drawing from your experiences as well.
Of course. Thank you for that question. So from my experience, especially working with academics, that you're right, we're having great research output in Cyprus. We're doing amazing work. We're having amazing scientists and innovators that are doing things in the lab. I have seen, I mean, it's not just one problem. There are multiple problems in this. The first, it's the funding, of course, but also dedicated funding, like a translational funding dedicated for healthcare. So people can put this to the next level. There are a lot of grants, for proof of concept, pre-seed, seed, etc. But then it takes more money to actually go through the clinical trials and help the innovator to put this in the market. The second is that we have weak translational mechanisms. So we don't have a structured pathway of commercializing research in Cyprus. We do have each stakeholder, it has a solution. For example, we do have TTO offices in universities. We do have innovation departments in research centers. We have the accelerators and incubators. We do have the startups, but everybody is working in parallel. So we need to connect all these people and the proposed pathways that they're suggesting for a scientist to move things outside the lab and connect them with each other so we can have something like a clear pipeline of what to do. And third, I would say is the ownership, because there is no clear path after a project ends. Who is going to take it to the next level? Who is going to be responsible for that?
I've got a quick question, if that's okay. So do you have a business development office in every university and university hospital where a business development manager can actually run with programs that they see are capable of translating into real outcomes and also, bring either pharma or business back into those universities and the hospital system to be able to have, the startups that you say, the spin outs of the university, they're able to go to, through pitches and be able to develop it further.
That would be the ideal scenario, to have an innovation center inside the hospital, something that and GMI is doing actually. You're having your own research and AI lab inside. So you're developing algorithms that you're using them daily into your workflows. You already know your pains, so you're developing solutions and you're using them. So this is the ideal scenario, but we don't have not all the hospitals are doing that. And I don't know if I answer your questions, but it would be good.
So first of all, just to, I think, bring the things back onto the right perspective. So we don't have an idea problem in Cyprus, and we don't have a research problem in Cyprus.
Yes.
What we're seeing from the government perspective and also from the perspective is we have people that feel more comfortable into endless research rather than doing the hard step to go into the translational side. Now, we've seen, and we do have institutions. We have the German Medical Institute. We have Karais Kagion. We have we have the Institute of Neurology. We have the Biobank, where each one of these has invested into the mechanisms required for them to be able to cross that area there. Hence why we also have successes. For example, we've had, I'll share a very interesting example. A few years ago, we had a gentleman who actually used to run the Institute of Neurology. He went over to become the Minister of Health.
Yeah.
He then, got inspired from his research, and he actually spinned out into a startup that eventually became acquired, and it was actually acquired globally. We're talking about Philippos Patsalis. So there are examples, but it takes the mentality that when you're going to do specifically what you want to do, and just like my visit highlighted when I visited Australia and specifically Monash University, having a university hospital very close to research, where you have medical professionals do both, right? Closes the gap, and it really creates the mechanisms. What we have at the state level, at the Research Innovation Foundation, which is the only funding agency in the country, we do have a technology transfer office, which is using a hub and spoke model to actually start preparing, let's say, the other spokes around into building, the IP, building the area. But we're at the stage where we're building, I think, each institute for them to understand that you do need, for example, IP protection, you do need the business development, you do need people who are experts in translational research, and those people go out there and build, the ecosystem. And what I'm saying exists in some of the companies. We don't have too many stars. So you will see, as I said, there are some institutes and there are some, pharmaceutical companies that are developing this ecosystem. But this is the bridge that we need to build what's next. And this is also what's very exciting, is because you're helping us see some of the areas that we need to prioritize. Thank you.
No, I agree. I think that, I sit on the advisory board for the Greek Scientist Society, and I think, there's tremendous innovation here. We have, Kostas, who's one of the co-founders of Theramir, here in Cyprus as well. And, there's tremendous science, there's tremendous innovation. But maybe a question for yourself, Costandino, in terms of, we know that innovation exists. I was part of co-founding a company in Boston, Cambridge in Massachusetts, whereby we were developing an iPSC-derived stem cell product. And we were developing the product in transfusion-dependent beta thalassemia. And I was advocating strongly for the CEO for us to run our clinical trials in Cyprus. And I say that on the day of World Thalassemia Day. And I don't want to steal the thunder of our esteemed guests in the room. But, pushing to see how we can, again, not only advocate for patients, but to give patients options. And that was a very complex product. So innovation exists, but it's not, is the issue adoption, do we think? And, how can we enhance that adoption? The great science, the translation, the ecosystem, but how can we drive that to ensure that patients are more aware or engaged, if that makes sense?
Yeah, of course. In order to have patients involved in clinical studies, they have to be informed. And as we mentioned before, we need, as Evangelia mentioned before, there is a need of dedicated funding for healthcare solutions and healthcare technologies. We cannot, as healthcare companies, we cannot really compete with real estate or fintech companies at the same call, because the implementation section of the proposal is much harder for us to complete, which the implementation section I'm mentioning is the patient comes in, and we have to include all of these links, let's say, how to access the patients, how to inform the patient, and in order to participate in our studies. Something I wanted to add on the previous point in terms of Cyprus, we don't have really the infrastructure for healthcare companies to scale up. Because we don't have IP protection services, we don't have a single patent attorney in the island that can write patents. We don't have a variety of, let's say at my field, we don't have a variety of patent attorneys that can actually write patents to protect ourselves. So we don't want to outsource this outside of Cyprus. If you know somebody, please let me know.
Yes, please, Dimitri. Yes.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I think it's important for us to. So we have Nick Kounoupkias from Michael and Associates. We have Achilles Emelianidis.
No, it's different. Patent attorneys, not IP lawyers. It's two different.
They do have those corporations that actually do provide the service. But happy to have that discussion and make sure that we don't. Have you heard of Christiana Aristidu?
There is a single firm in Limassol that provides such service, but you need a variety of expertise to provide such services. Because I work in the hardware. I work in the hardware and not in the software, for example. So different expertise, different people need to support these kind of patents. On top of that, I want to add, in order to scale up in Cyprus, you need support on ISO compliance, which again, very few firms in Limassol, again, only provide ISO 13845 compliance for medical device quality management systems. And again, we have to go abroad to get these services. And another thing about Limassol, if a firm is based in Limassol, the price of their services is compared to a London price. So as a Cypriot business owner, I will prefer someone with more experience, and I will go to London.
So, I think there's, again, being a drug developer myself, I recognize some of the challenges, but I think this is also the power of the diaspora, in terms of our ability, to Dimitri's point, uncovering and unearthing connections and relationships. And maybe there's ways of helping us to connect the dots, so to speak, because we're all driven by the same objective, at least in this track, which is trying to do what we can for science and innovation and for patients. So I'm hoping that, again, the network and the power of our diaspora can help us enhance, support, and get you to the point that you need to be.
Thank you. So I find that gap to be quite profound, if that's true, because essentially there should be graduate programs within the universities, such as the University of Cyprus, for instance, that could offer graduate diplomas or graduate programs within patent law, specifically for graduates with PhDs in either the biological or physical sciences. So these are super specialties that allow those people to get into and produce or generate their own firms within Cyprus, or alternatively, work within the university system as business development managers. So I find it quite amazing that that's the case, if that's true, that you don't have proper patent attorneys, you have to outsource. But, that's the first thing that should be established as a university program, graduate diplomas to allow for specialised scientists, either in the physical or biological sciences, to be able to graduate those programs.
Yeah, so Constantino, you've got a point. And then maybe, Evangelia, maybe you have a perspective on this as well in your engagement with universities, early stage biotech companies. But Constantino, please.
One point from the medical point of view, talking about implementation into the hospitals, we have to realize that we are on an island with 1 million people. I was working in Germany in a hospital where one hospital had more beds than all the hospitals in Cyprus together. And even in Germany, they started to building translational networks, German cancer translational networks, and so on. In Cyprus, we did not manage to collaborate between the hospitals, between the universities. So this is a very important point to offer you also a little bit bigger field to test your products. So I'm highly advocating towards a better collaboration between the Cypriot hospitals and universities. This would also something policy should maybe push us, because we are not so good in collaboration here in Cyprus. There should be a little bit more push towards collaboration to have one trial unit, one Cypriot trial unit, something like this, to have a centralized system there. And the other point of view, what we have in Cyprus is very excellent patient advocacy services. So talking about cancer, Europa Donna, Europa Homo, they are very strong. I just can talk about my field, but I'm sure also in the other fields. You should also push a little bit towards these directions.
I agree. So I know, Dimitri, you've got to leave in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm hosting the minister.
So let's maybe have some final comments from you, if that's okay.
I just wanted
and then Steve, we can come to you in Evangelia.
Yes. So first of all, I'll apologize that I have to run, but I'm actually hosting the minister on another panel. What I wanted to say, and I'll take this as an example in a parallel and something else that's not medicine. In the area of artificial intelligence, we do have a very challenging act in front of us. It's called the EU AI Act. And there is a lot of vagueness there. We do have at the national standards body, which is called Cyprus Standardization Board, we do have mappings per each field where we want to actually develop the standard and we want to actually eventually use ISO, that we have people that are on-point experts, others are lawyers, etc., that represent us and actually develop the standard. So for the case of EU AI Act, we do have one of the island's most prominent technology, let's say, attorney, is Christiana Aristidou. She's the one who's actually representing Cyprus in the actual technical committee of ISO 27000, right? And like that on point where we do see that we want to develop that synergies, we actually go back, we go from the Ministry of Health, we align that with the standards organization, we align it with the Research Innovation Foundation, and we build the bridge. Happy to look into the specific standard that the colleague has actually mentioned where we do have a gap. If we do have a gap, we will have to look into it very fast. I love the point about the specific dedicated fund for translational research, right? And the need to bring, for example, clinicians much closer to research. I think this is actually one of the things that we can actually look into very fast in terms of, the needs we have. And I'll go back to one of the powerful, let's say, mechanisms of the diaspora is where you see that there are solutions that you can actually facilitate, right? Either these are through the working relationships you have or helping us plug the gaps, right, in terms of consultancy that can help us address all of these. Please do reach out, right? So I'll just, when you do have an opportunity, share with me the ISO standard that's missing and I'll look into it.
Thank you so much.
The medical device quality management system 13845, it's under the CE marking you have to go through. You have to have it established in order to get your CE mark and scale up your business and enter the market because it's a medical device. It needs regulated. It needs to be regulated. It needs to be certified. So that's the most important ISO 13845.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dimitri. Thank you for being here. So I think just maintaining that sort of very similar theme, and we've heard some very specific, comments, Evangelia. Maybe share your perspective. You're focusing on that, that early stage, startup kind of component. So just wanted to kind of get your perspective on that as well, maybe.
Yeah, sure. First, I'm going to agree with Konstantinos about the collaboration. We do collaborate when it comes to research with hospitals, yes, but then this collaboration most probably ends and there is no continuation. We need to enhance these collaborations between the universities, the medical centers, and this is, it goes back to the ownership thing that I said before. If there is a translational funding, and there is the right person to drive this forward, then we can move things outside. And something that I can see the people from diaspora that can do for early stage startups in the health tech domain and medtech is that they can be advisors. I know a lot of founders that they're seeking advisors in their domain that they can guide them to the next level. And it's also like, it's more attractive, let's say, for startups to have advisors from abroad and also giving them the resources that they can move these things forward. The second thing is any connection that you can do with like hospitals abroad, even for clinical testing, validation, or even collaborations. I don't know. That would be great. Yes. And in general, the network that you can provide to early stage founders and all the expertise that you have, that would be very important and beneficial for founders.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree. I think, it's that cross-pollination almost, but going back to, your earlier point, Costandino, about obviously having experience from another healthcare system in another European country, what does good look like? And how can we replicate that here in Cyprus? And again, there may be perspectives that other members of the panel want to share.
Sure.
But ultimately, I think it's about establishing a vision, translating it, being able to, I think, replicate it and scale. Mm-hmm. We talk about scale as a very central theme, but just wanted to kind of get your perspective on that as well.
So talking about healthcare, first of all, we have to say the good things in Cyprus. We don't have so much regulations like, for example, in Northern Europe. So for us, it's easier to start innovative clinical trials, clinical testing in our hospital. So this is a huge advantage we have. Second, a huge advantage, our patients, they cannot leave so easily. So we have always in clinical trials the problem of lost in follow-up. We are living on an island and we can find our patients. So these are two very big advantages we have. We should leverage these advantages, I would say, by two things, as I said. First of all, we need more collaborative networks. We need a centralized clinical trial unit system to pool our patients. This is very important. We have to learn to collaborate. And second, again, as I said, we need dedicated funding support programs for clinical translational research. Right now, it's not there. We need to have clinician scientists. For example, in Germany, half of my time was paid by the government for me to do research, not by the hospital. Because when the hospital is paying me, of course, the hospital wants me to see patients, not to do research. So This is very important. I think we cannot rely on the Ministry of Health on this point. Let's be realistic. I think there are just two solutions. Either the scientific societies, we have the Cypriot Oncology Society, nephrology, whatever. So maybe we should give the scientific bodies the power. Personally, I think this is the best way to do this. Otherwise, it's at least in cancer, we're building now the National Cancer Institute. This would be a second opinion. But again, I would give the power to the scientific bodies.
Steve.
Yeah, thank you. So in the current life that we lead with regards to patients being managed right throughout their life journeys of, say, a chronic disease, it's really critical that societies' interaction with the clinicians that are on boards and whatever, but at the same time, you've got the implementations of registries that are followed through, and these are global registries, a lot of them. A prime example is that we set up a registry in Australia back in 2000 that's called MS Base. This is a MS registry where patient management occurs for all the medications that are on those, the patients that are on those medications. Also, their life journey through the disease. MS can take up to 30 to 40 years, living with the disease. So we get real-time data. We get, the lived experience of the patient. And we can also suggest to the patient at the stage of disease, well, it's, this new drug is coming through development now. Do you have the option to get onto this drug? Do you want that option?
Yeah.
So that's the immediate dialogue that the physician has with their patient that they're managing for the entirety of their disease course.
I think it reflects the power of, the power of evidence and data. But how can we harness it? How can we consolidate data? And how can we use the data to inform a patient journey? And so again, it goes back to the fundamental, our ability to do things consistently and methodically, and the ability to scale, because again, patients are waiting. So I know that we're getting close to the end of our session. I think it's been a fascinating conversation. And I thank everyone for their, participation and comments and questions. Maybe final thoughts from each of the panel members. We've discussed many elements, I would say, and there's a very complex ecosystem that we need to navigate together. But just maybe some final thoughts on some of the themes that we've heard over the last 60 minutes or so. Vangelia, maybe we'll start with you.
Yes. So my final thoughts for this is that we talk a lot about the funding, that it's needed. I talk a lot about policy, that yes, it's fundamental. We should start from there to create the structure and building blocks so we can move things forward. But my conclusion is that in the end, it comes to the people that we're gonna run this and accelerate it and take things to the next level. And I'm talking about the scientists that they're having ideas, they're testing them, they are having something innovative, but they don't really take this outside the lab. Everything should work in parallel. So yes, we want the policy, the funding, the people, the clear structure pathways work all together, but we also need the motivation from the people and the interest and a bit to look outside Cyprus, so to build things, but also to have big dreams, like not just because the scalability that you mentioned, it comes way after.
Yes.
Seeing early stage health tech founders, they're focusing more into how to get funds, how to be aligned with the regulations rather than how to scale it and what if I can test it in the UK or in another country. So yeah, that's my conclusion. And collaboration.
Thank you.
So I think what we've discussed today is essential mechanics about the translational path and what the critical aspect of the opportunity that Cyprus provides in this path. What we haven't really discussed in sort of more detail is about what this is going to mean for the patient, because the patients are the critical thing. It's the unmet medical needs that we're trying to address, and not only Cyprus but globally.
Yeah.
And Cyprus is on the global scale, and we have to make certain that all of the attributes that have made the US successful, Australia, UK successful in adopting, new methods to be able to deliver to their patients, specifically the options for novel and innovative therapeutic outcomes, is that we integrate with those systems as best we can. And so, I'm more than happy to be able to come to Cyprus and deliver some of the aspects that, say, my company is doing in Australia and incorporate that in Cyprus. And I'm actually excited about it. I think Cyprus is on the precipice of something, really great in that space. But it really does need cohesion and a wanting to be able to deliver on this. Yes, there are structural problems, but you fix it.
Yeah. Agreed. Konstantinos?
As two messages just to close from myself as an innovator. The patients need to be part of the innovation of the research since day one. So,
yeah.
Yes, as a patient. So a device, a software should be designed around the patient.
Agreed.
And there are many ways that you can do this. You can, as engineers or clinicians, which are already there in the clinic, can attend the clinics that are screening the patients and get to know the patient, get to know the difficulties, get to know what's needed for such a device to be developed and, be structured around their lifestyle. And secondly, something that is we do very well in the UK is forming multidisciplinary teams in order to approach and come up with a new idea. So not only clinicians, there should be engineers in the room, there should be physiotherapists, for example, there should be biologists, all on the same equal level in order to come up with a new idea. So that's 2 points that I wanted to raise, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Konstantinos, please.
Yeah, I think we should go with a positive point of view back from this session. At the end of the day, there is a huge potential. Things are not so complicated at all, I would say, because we are a small island. We can tackle all the mentioned issues. If there's a willingness, there are the patients. I'm sure that if we do these next steps as discussed, the next year at the Diaspora Forum, we can even see some achievements.
Agreed.
So the Octopus trial specifically from the UK, that's an adaptive trial, actually incorporated patient design within the clinical trial from the outset, incorporated them within the study, and also published their findings with the names of the patients that were involved in that study. Correct. Yeah.
But this is something we are doing the last 5 years. Each study protocol coming from our center, there's a patient representative on the protocol. But let's face the Cypriot reality. We have now a running trial sponsored by the RIF with not so much money, but there is some money, testing a new health app from a startup, a Cypriot startup for prostate cancer patients. I checked the numbers today. We asked 150 patients if they want to participate. The only thing is to enter the quality of life questionnaires instead of a paper in the app. Make a guess how many patients participate from the 150. 10. We have study nurses, we have nice fancy information leaflets, we have everything in place. 10 patients participate. Your point with the money is a point. We don't have the funding to also pay the patients for this, but this is a reality in Cyprus.
But I think just to maybe, no, I appreciate the point, just to maybe pick up on Maria's point. So in my experience, and I think worldwide clinical trials is a good option, we think about patient concierge, for example. So if we're working with a sponsor and we're helping to operationalize their clinical trial, then I agree. It's an obligation of the sponsor to support the patient in terms of that concierge type approach. And that's the practicality with financial implication, not only for the patient, I would add to that, it's also about the caregiver in some circumstances. So again, I think we're all kind of navigating to the same point. We need to build the framework around the patient, and it has to be very patient-centric, but we need to be able to influence the patient journey. I want to be respectful of time with the next session coming up. So maybe I can just kind of, close. First of all, to thank each and every one of my panel members for their time and their energy. I think in some ways we've diagnosed what the issue is around the system, but we've still got work to do. It's very clear that, in my opinion, Cyprus doesn't lack expertise. It lacks alignment, I think, to the point earlier. Okay? The diaspora is not an audience, in my opinion. It's an operating system. It goes back to the point earlier around the power of the diaspora and how we can continue to support and inform, collaborate and enhance. And the opportunity, I think, is real in terms of what we can achieve. The only remaining question in my mind is who takes ownership. And on that point, I'd like to thank the audience and I'd like to thank my panel as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Cyprus Diaspora Uncovered. Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for more inspiring conversations that are shaping Cyprus's global future. You can also explore more episodes on our website and selected video interviews on our YouTube channels.